Welcome to week 3, lecture 4, load monitoring in sports 1. Objective of lecture 4 are rationalize use of monitoring sports training, to know types of monitoring practices in sports, and to know monitoring technologies and methods that are used in sports. The outcome of this lecture is you should be able to understand the importance of monitoring sports training and to recall different monitoring method and technologies that are practiced in sports training. Let's start by understanding why you should be monitoring the sports training. In the previous lectures, our entire emphasis was on concept of load training. So with an examples, it's very apparent that without monitoring all these loads, you cannot make an appropriate decision whether the given load for a week is stimulating or retaining. So the first objective for you to monitor sports training is to create a guiding system or a tool to make an informed decision on choosing an optimal training load. Now when it comes to athlete, understand that an athlete performance, it is based on three pillars. The first is the physical capacity, which is defined as the fitness level. The second is the psychological capacity, which can be measured and defined as preparedness. And with respect to the last, sports skills or tactics, which are the game strategies. So among these three pillars, when we say about the training load monitoring, we are focusing on only one pillar of the entire athletic performance. So it is not just the training load that you need to monitor. You also need to monitor the athlete's preparedness and the athlete's sports drills and tactics. So apart from training load monitoring, the another reason for you to monitor the sports training is to identify the athlete's readiness for the upcoming training session and competition. Another reason for you to monitor the sports training is after doing the physical training or the sports training, you need to monitor what are the training responses. If a positive response is identified, it means the adaptation has been completed and the athlete has a new baseline of fitness and performance. If the response is negative, you can consider as a red flag and you should be giving it a raw recovery period so that the negative response is converted to a positive response. Another factor for you to monitor the sports training is to track the recovery, because without recovery, appropriate recovery, starting a new training routine or a new week routine would lead towards an overtraining for an athlete. So it's not just the physical fitness to monitor or the mental preparedness to monitor, but you have to monitor all the three pillars of athletic performance, which together is considered as monitoring for sports training. Now let's start by understanding what are the different monitoring technologies or methods in sports. The table given here mentions different method and technologies of monitoring in the sports with the level of their use, with the level of their evidence, and with the practical value. Among the given different technologies and method of sports monitoring, global positioning system or accelerometer, RPE, movement screening, and wellness questionnaires are the highest level of use with a highest number of evidence except for the movement screening and more of practical value. Apart from this method and technology, there are variable technologies that can be used to monitor the sports as well as non-sports activity when we compare it for a non-athlete, when we consider a non-athlete. Then there is a velocity based training technology which is specifically used for an athlete population to monitor their power training. There are also timing gate technology specifically used to monitor the speed sessions, which can include in a linear direction as well as in multiple direction, which is observed in case of agility training. Now let's explore few of these methodologies and technologies, starting with global positioning system or accelerometer. It's actually a device just like a router or a Wi-Fi hub, which is placed on an athlete's training attire as shown in the image. So when an athlete completes his sports training session or completes his physical training session like conditioning or speed session, the ultimate outcome of global positioning system reading would look like as shown in the table. So the training units can be duration of the sports training or duration of the conditioning or speed session, the distance that the athlete covers at speed greater than 18 km per hour, that is the sprinting speed, or the number of sprints. The target is prescribed, and using this device, you can monitor among the prescribed the target, how much is the target an athlete is able to perform. So recollect that earlier we used density to describe the training. Now apart from density, when you combine this information, it gives you a more better idea about how did the athlete perform for a given session or a given week. In this case, the athlete has done 100% of the prescribed volume of training load, which can be monitored using GPS. Now let's move to another technology which is commonly used in sports training to monitor the athlete's physical fitness training or sports training activity, heart rate measure. It's a device which is connected to a strap which is put around the athlete's strap as shown, athlete's trunk as shown in the image. Now heart rate measure, it actually measures objectively your heartbeats. Now how would you use it? You prescribe the intensity of cardio as vigorous to maximal. You calculated the objective heartbeat using the Carvonian formula. Now using this technology, you can now very objectively find whether the athlete has trained within the prescribed training zone. And you can also find the average heart rate of the training. Let's say you have prescribed to train with vigorous to maximal intensity of cardio. The athlete has trained at maximal intensity. That's what the athlete would give a feedback. But the average heartbeat that the athlete has trained for 16 minutes is at vigorous level. So though the athlete's exercise response is maximal, but on an average level, the athlete has done exercise at a vigorous intensity. Now this gives much more detailed information about the internal load that an athlete is performing, the athlete has performed. That's how you can use heart rate monitor technology to monitor the internal load of the athlete. Let's move to the next method of monitoring practices in sport. Rate of perceived exertion, RPE. Now RPE is a method which was designed by G. Borg he has developed different scales that can relate to the exercise intensity. The most commonly used scale is Borg's 6 to 20 scales. You simply add a 0 in front of the number that is given. For example, 6 add a 0, it means you exercise with a heartbeat of 60. Let's say you exercise and the perception of the effort for a given exercise, you say it is 120. That is 12. You add a 0, so it would become 120. So it means you have exercised at 120 beats per minute. This is how Borg 6 to 20 scale can be used. Another widely used Borg scale is category ratio Borg 10 scale or category ratio Borg 100 scale. These are just different types of Borg scale which can be used to quantify the training responses or the training load of an athlete. There is another RPE named as session RPE, which combines the category ratio 10 scale with the training load. Let's take an example. We describe the training intensity or the training responses by using Borg 6 to 20 scale, where 6 to 10 stands for very light exertion, 11 to 15 stand for somewhat hard exertion, and 16 to 20 stands for very hard to very hard exertion. When you use this scale, you have to ask athlete one question: what is the exertion of your exercise, or what is the exertion of your training session? Now let's consider an example where you have prescribed a target of 60 minutes duration to cover a distance of 500 meters at speed greater than 18 km per hour. Now let's add the Borg scale. You prescribe the target to train this speed session with 15 to 20, which means that the heart rate should range in between 150 to 200 beats. And the training that is done, you ask the athlete what is your Borg scale for the given training session, and he says that it is 14. So in that case, we can conclude that the athlete has trained at much more lesser effort in compared to what has been prescribed. Now let's combine Borg scale with heart rate monitor technology. You prescribed a target cardio intensity of 85% to 100% of HRR, and the athlete performs it with an average of 80% of HRR, which is much more less than the prescribed intensity. And when you combine that with the Borg scale, you can confirm the athlete's exertion, because the internal load verifies that the athlete has exercised at much more lower beats, heartbeat, in compared to what has been prescribed. So you should not be using the Borg scale as a standalone method to monitor the sporting activity or fitness session. Rather, you should be combining technologies and method to get a more better picture about the training load or the stress or the recovery of an athlete. Let's use session RPE as a monitoring method. Before we go ahead, you have to be aware that the session RPE category ratio 10 scale is different in compared to RPE category ratio 10 scale. So you have to use this table, ask the athlete, and if the athlete says that my RPE scale is 3, it means he has exercised at moderate intensity. So the exertion of the exercise is moderate for him. Session RPE is specifically used to calculate the session load. which is used, which can be calculated by formula duration into session RPE. Now let's consider an example where you have given a target to complete the training session with an session RPE of 7 to 10, and the athletes complete the training session with a session RPE of 9. So how do you calculate a session load for a given training session? Using the formula 60 minutes duration multiplied by session RPE, that is 9, which comes out to be 540 arbitrary units. That's how you can monitor the training stressors or the training responses for an sporting activity or a physical activity session. Let's move to the next category of monitoring methodology, wellness questionnaires. As mentioned earlier, we are not focused on only the training load of an athlete. When we work with an athlete, we have to improve an athlete overall performance, for which we need to focus on all the 3 pillars of performance, which is fitness level, preparedness, and game strategies or tactics. So in order to monitor each one of them, you need to use a different monitoring method or technology. The technology and the method that we have covered up till now helps to monitor with respect to the fitness level. It also helps to monitor with respect to the training stressors or with respect to the recovery. If you want to monitor the preparedness, you have to focus and use method which are different than that of GPS, heart rate monitor, and rate of pursuit exertion. To monitor preparedness, you have to use something called as wellness questionnaires. Now, there are different kinds of wellness questionnaires, which includes mood questionnaire, muscle soreness questionnaire, training distress questionnaire, nutritional questionnaires, recovery questionnaires, life demand questionnaires. So all of these questionnaires covers the wellness of an athlete, will ultimately helps to know the preparedness of an athlete. So the outcome of this different questionnaire help the coaches and practitioners determine the effect an athlete would have on the training program. In case the questionnaires outcome results with a negative impact, you can have an understanding that the athlete is not well prepared for the upcoming session or for an upcoming event. In this case, you can make an informed decision to guide your training program or to guide an athlete to overcome this low level of preparedness. So in summary, the use, evidence and practical value of GPS, RPE and wellness questionnaire monitoring technology and method is very high. And so you can observe this kind of monitoring technologies and method are used very frequently, and they should be used for the betterment of an athlete's performance. RPE method should not be used as a standalone method. Rather, it should be integrated with the GPS or an heart rate monitor method. Thank you.